Hello and welcome back. I'm your host for today's exciting live event, the second in our 6 weekly LinkedIn Live workshops, Unlock the Power of Jobs to be Done. I'm Brent Schmidt, a partner in Agile Innovation Advisors, and I'm honored to have you all joining us for this important topic. Make sure to watch our first session, Why Jobs to be Done. Zach posted that in the comments section. So please share this series with other people in marketing product roles who would be interested in sharpening their skills. Remember, this isn't a one-way conversation. So why don't we start off today? Anyone that's joining us live, just put the city that you are living in currently or where you're currently located in the comments, just so we know who's joining us. That would be great. Feel free to ask us any questions in the comments section. We'll get to them at the end. So Zach, let's dive in.
Great. Thank you, Brent. And welcome back to the Jobs to be Done Foundation Workshop Series. Again, I'm Zach Lyons, Managing Partner of Agile Innovation Advisors, and I've been helping companies stop wasting time on solutions that customers just don't want, using jobs to be done for over 20 years. Now, a quick recap of last week. We talked about why jobs to be done is important and how it gives us a lens that helps us to see people and their needs differently. If you missed it, as Brent just mentioned, check out the link to the recording in the comments below. Today, we're going to be discussing for whom are you creating value? In other words, what is your target market? So most economists define a market around a set of products or services being sold, such as insurance, apps, mortgages, or even fresh produce. But how does defining the market by the number of products sold in the past tell you if the market can grow in the future? See, this view of markets may be helpful for economists when measuring GDP, but innovation requires a forward-looking view that product-based market definitions can't provide. Instead, we define a market as a set of people willing and able to expend resources to get something done. And what they are trying to get done is the job. We'll have much more on that next week, so stay tuned. This means to properly frame a market, we must clearly define the set of people and the job. So for example, families saving for a vacation, set of people and the job they're trying to get done. Or CFOs managing company cash flows. Different set of people, different job, different market. Or consumers investing in stocks. Now, defining our markets in this way, rather than around solutions, provides this forward-looking perspective that can then be used to understand how customers define value beyond today's solutions. So here's why this is valuable. If you were only to look at the current set of solutions being sold, then you might end up choosing to invest or not invest in a market simply based on what has happened in the past. However, we know that solutions come and go. It doesn't mean, though, that people are not trying to get the job done anymore. So, for example, even though people don't buy records, tapes, CDs, or iPods much anymore, we are all still doing the job of listening to recorded music. We have simply moved on to music streaming services because it helps us to get the job done better. Anyone here still listening to records or tapes? I know my son just bought a record player, but really for vintage reasons. So identifying and selecting the markets in which you want to compete based on the set of people and the job is a key first step in achieving your company's growth goals, because now you can size markets using this forward-looking view. So if you've only been half paying attention to this point, I encourage you to give me your full attention, at least for the next 2 slides. It's going to get a little more complex, but I want to zoom out a bit and give you the full picture. So for any given market, as we've been talking about, there's commonly other sets of people whose jobs intersect. And we call this a market ecosystem. And we name each set of people by their role in the ecosystem. We do this because it's not always easy to define who you want to create value for and what job they're doing, especially if you operate in a B2B environment. But it is very critical to do this to help frame a jobs to be done study. So here are the 5 different roles in a market ecosystem. First, we have job executors who use or hire a product or service to get something done. And these folks are often called the user in the tech world. Next, we have job beneficiaries who benefit from a product or service used to get something done. Job overseers who supervise or evaluate something that is performed by others. Fourth, we have purchase decision makers who make the decision to purchase a product or service, as the name implies. And lastly, we have what we call adjacent job executors who do something that is related to what a job executor is doing. So they're executing jobs, but they're in a related way to the core job executor. So to help illustrate and hopefully make this a little clearer, let's look at the example market ecosystem of parents saving for a child's education. First, we have parents who are, of course, doing the job of saving for a child's education. So that's the core job executor and the job they're trying to do. Next, in this example, children would benefit from the job their parents are doing when they obtain the education. So they are the job beneficiary. A job overseer in this example could be a financial advisor who helps the parents save for the child's education. The purchase decision maker for this market ecosystem are actually the parents who purchase investment products to save for a child's education. And it's not uncommon in a consumer market for the job executor and purchase decision maker to be the same person. And then lastly, we have adjacent job executors, including investment professionals providing investment products to save for a child's education. We have university financial aid administrators providing financial aid to students, and even loan officers providing student loans. Now, we recommend laying out the market ecosystem for the markets you serve or want to serve so you can be more explicit in who you are creating value for. Look, we know that this effort is not always easy. So here are some tips and tricks we have learned along the way that we hope will benefit you as well. First, the job executor is typically, but not always, the primary point of focus in a market ecosystem. Without them, there really isn't much reason for the other sets of people to do their jobs. This is usually where we start when thinking about for whom to create value. However, sometimes a job executor doesn't have enough perspective to provide insight on that job, so we may have to focus on the job overseer. And the example we just went through, financial advisors are a perfect example of an overseer. Or in a business environment, perhaps a manager overseeing frontline workers. They could be a job overseer that you may want to speak to instead of the actual frontline workers doing the job. In consumer-oriented market ecosystems, the consumer is usually the job executor, the purchase decision maker, and could even be the job beneficiary. In other words, they wear multiple hats because they're doing all these different roles. So now that we understand these various roles in a market ecosystem, I encourage you to think about your organization's customers in these terms. Map it out. Who is a job executor? Who benefits? Who makes the purchase decision? Instead of grouping everyone as your customer, break them down so you have a clear view of who is doing what in your ecosystem. A couple other tips. Make sure you define these initially in a way that covers everyone in that role so that you don't miss an opportunity to innovate within a segment of the market. So for example, if you sell cars, we recommend recommend defining the job executor as car buyers instead of, for example, 35-year-old women buying a car. Or similarly, if you make financial management software for companies, we recommend defining the job executor as CFOs or perhaps controllers and not Fortune 500 CFOs. In other words, we don't typically define the job executors by demographics or firmographics. Furthermore, who you are creating value for does need to be a set of people and not an entity. So in the example we just talked about, financial advisors is a set of people, not the investment firm they work for. So once you think you've got your market ecosystem figured out, hold on to it, because next week we're going to discuss what job your customer is trying to get done. Let's open it up to questions.
All right, if you have any questions, I am having a bit of a technical delay. I don't know if you can hear me okay, Zach.
I can.
So let's, any questions you have, please put them in the comments and we'll get to those.
I know it was a lot of material in a short period of time, so I'm sure people have some comments or questions to try to unpack some of that.
Where do you think, where do people tend to go off track with this area of jobs to be done?
Yeah, this is a good question. I get asked that quite a bit. One of the challenges in this upfront piece where we're sort of laying out this market ecosystem and identifying the different roles is that a lot of times people may define it too narrowly. So I just kind of gave an example of a demographic, 35-year-old women buying a car. And we don't really want to do that early on. We want to be broad. In other words, we want to define all the people who are doing this. So in that example, consumers, car buyers are the people buying the car. And the reason we do this is that as we go through and study the job and look at different groups of people trying to get the job done, later on we can identify other segments of that group of people who are struggling more with specific needs in the job that then could be targeted for innovation. So early on, we want to stay broadly enough to say, who are all the types of people? And again, it's people, not firms or companies, but people who are doing that job.
There's a question here from Wolfram.
Yep. So the question, what's your opinion on set of people compared to personas? Are they similar? So a lot of times we use personas to sort of help bring to life inside an organization what our target customer is. And so that might include behaviors or even like demographics. So I think they're similar, but I think a lot of times the personas are almost more than we need to define early on in a jobs to be done study. If you know your target is a very specific audience and that's all you're trying to get insights from, then I think using the persona as your job executor could be okay. But for most organizations, they're using jobs to be done to identify opportunities in the market, and just jumping into a persona who could be a subsegment of a larger set of people, you may end up maybe missing opportunities in other segments or even maybe other personas, right, that are out there. So I encourage you to start broad initially with that set of people so that when you go gather needs from the market, you're gathering all the needs from different people in that market. Again, later on, you can actually be more clear about, is there a specific segment or persona where the needs are more unique that you feel like you have an opportunity to address more specifically, giving your company's capabilities and offering, et cetera.
Question
good
from
question.
Ted.
Can there be several types of people in the given roles in the market ecosystem? So there can be different types of people in different roles. And sometimes the same person, I try to hit on this a little bit in the example, can have different roles. So in our example, the consumer who's saving, or a family who's saving for a child's education, the parents, let's call them collectively, are the job executor, but there also could be, I see. Actually, I'm thinking about the question. So he's saying, are there other people who are actually the job executor? So if there are different groups of people doing the same job, then those are really different markets, and it could have different market ecosystems. You just got to be careful here about defining those types of people as sort of segments of the population. So we were saying parents or families saving for a child's education, but if you mean by like different types, for example, I'm going to make up something here, right? Maybe single family parents, right? A single parent versus a parent with two people, as the parents. Those are really segments, right? So I wouldn't call those different types of people. But later on, when you identify needs and prioritize those needs, you can say, well, is there a difference in saving for a child's education for a parent who's a single parent versus two parents with a kid, or even families that have more than one kid, right? So there may be different ways to cut and segment the market in these ways. Initially, I would just define them as parents. But if you said, for example, I'm trying to think of an example of saving for education, maybe even a child saving for education, I would say that, that's really a different market, right? It has a different group of people trying to get the job done, which defines it as different market. And that's not uncommon. For example, we've looked at hospitality, and you might have travelers going in to stay at a hotel, right? So check into a hotel. Business travelers checking into a hotel is a different group of people than, say, families checking into a hotel. So potentially you could have two different studies with two different markets. So there's nuances here about how clear you want to be on the group of people, but usually we want to define it as broadly as possible to gather those needs from the markets, as I said early on, unless you as a business say, look, our whole objective is really to target one set of people, then I would recommend then that you define that as your job executor. It's a good question. There's some nuances to that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Any more questions before we close for today?
Seems like this time we got the questions more in real time, which is good. Or at least it feels that way.
We're learning as we go. Here, I'll show you. There's a follow-up comment here. Let's keep the conversation going around personas.
You need many precise personas. I mean, so what I would encourage people to think about, personas as a tool have value in a business, right? And so they're used mainly as a way to sort of connect internally to the customer, that target audience who you're developing product for or marketing to. So I think of personas as really differently than what we're talking about as a set of people. We're being actually, I would almost say, a little simpler in defining it, right? So in that example, parents, not really a persona. We're talking about parents, obviously, who have children, if they're saving for a child's education. But that really is enough to frame up your study, at least initially, to go after to gather needs from the market. And we'll talk about that next week. Personas, later on, you actually could develop as a result of the study and say, okay, we're really targeting parents who have these challenges and these beliefs. And oh, by the way, they may have certain contexts or demographics that matter, perhaps, right? And so a persona actually could be developed as a result of the jobs to be done study. I don't know, Brent, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you're answering it well. There's another follow-up question here from Ted. Love the conversation today. Appreciate the input and the questions. Yeah, this is good.
Would the market ecosystem be the precursor to defining the TAM
market here?
Yeah. So I think laying it out in the market ecosystem, being explicit about it, is a good way to start thinking about what that total addressable market is. So yes, I think it is a good precursor. You could actually, in some ways, you could say each of those people on the market ecosystem, they're doing, again, as I mentioned, related jobs. So these are really different markets. So if you're selling a product or service, and a lot of people think, okay, here's the market, and they may think of only, in that example, to use it again, as the parents. But really, what if you were selling a product to the parents, but also maybe another or related product to financial advisors? So really, those are different markets, different groups of people getting different jobs done. Again, they overlap and they relate. And so your addressable market is much bigger if you think in those terms. So yes, I would say that market ecosystem is a precursor to figuring out your TAM.
Love it.
I'll add one more thing to that.
Any other questions before we?
Sorry, Brent.
Yeah.
So
go for it.
The other thing is, in sizing markets in general, the kind of idea of TAM is that most people will size a market, as I mentioned at the beginning, based on how many products or services are sold in that market. And so this is where I think a lot of people do get tripped up, because they'll look at a market like the music, listening to recorded music, and say, look, the number of products or number of CDs or iPods has gone down. But as I talked about, people are still doing that job. So you have to be careful when you do a TAM, is that you want to look at it from the perspective of how many people are doing the job. If you size markets in that way, it really can open up, markets that people are saying that's a dead market or it's a shrinking market. Well, maybe not. Maybe just less services and products are being sold, but maybe more and more people are doing that job. So there's an opportunity to invest. So you may find innovation opportunities where others don't see it because you have a different perspective using the jobs to be done lens.
That's really what we're talking about, right? Is this lens and how it reshapes our perspective. When you start with a client, Zach, what is often the big pivot for them? Where do they often start when it comes to how they define a target market?
Most companies, since they typically don't have the lens of jobs, they typically look at customers buying their product or service, right? So they look at what I would call more of an industry focus. So if we're selling a product, how many people buy our product? How many people buy our competitors' products? So it's clearly just focused on those products and services being sold today. And again, as I said, that's a backward-looking view from an innovation perspective. It may be fine from accounting and finance because you need to report how many you sell and people size markets in that way. But when you're trying to make decisions as a product or business leader, you really want a perspective that looks forward, not backwards. And I think that's
Awesome.
the core issue.
Looks like our questions are close. Yeah. So a big opportunity to really reframe the perspective, opens up possibilities for innovation.
Oh, we have another question.
Here's another one from Ted. Yeah, we'll make this our last one for today, but this is great. Thanks, Ted. And others.
What's a good way to pitch the benefits? Yeah. So what's a good way to pitch the benefits of starting with a market ecosystem to stakeholders who are unfamiliar jobs to be done? Yeah, I mean, the market ecosystem activity, can be done pretty quickly, right? I mean, the idea is that you are really starting with, and you probably will start with the product, right? And then, you would think about, okay, who, and sometimes we do this in customer interviews if it's not obvious, but you think about who is using that product, right, today. So in tech, right, we call them users. So in a lot of ways, those are the job executors. And then it's thinking about, okay, who else around them are doing jobs. So in a business, if you have users in a B2B environment, right? You may have a certain set of users using the product, but there's usually a group of people who have to make the decision to purchase it. So those are the purchase decision makers. You may have another group who are responsible for maintaining the technology and systems, right? The IT department. So that's also a related set of people. So you can start unwinding it, but starting with that job executor and kind of walking through it is a good first step. It doesn't have to be a massive effort. So I guess I'm wondering how much you have to pitch the benefits, other than, I think the big thing is you don't want to go do a jobs to be done effort or any effort in doing market research until you're clear on who it is you're trying to get insights from. So like any project, right? Framing up that project initially is a key first step, and mapping out the ecosystem, I think, is a big part of that in the jobs to be done world. So maybe it's just saying, hey, we're going to frame the market. So help me, let's frame it. Who we're going to go interview. Let's map out all the potential players that we could go interview. Maybe an easy way to pitch it.
Good stuff. There's a comment here. I'll let you have a look at this.
So didn't you say last week that innovation is your added value to get towards success and leave your competitors behind? So I'm trying to, so yes, and I guess, innovation is sort of one of those buzzwords, right? Yeah. So innovation is one of those buzzwords, right? That what we're really talking about, I think, is, how do you do innovation? How do you get to identifying the unmet needs in the market? And jobs to be done is really the methodology and the framework that allows us to do this. Not just do it once, but in a repeatable, sustainable way, in a systematic way. If you get good at jobs to be done and following the methodology and framework and really understanding your customers, then I would argue that's sort of your secret weapon to beating the competition. Most companies don't have it, so they look at what is the competition doing, and we should go copy what the competition's doing, because maybe they know something we don't. And if you are really good at understanding the job and defining your customers, then in some ways you can ignore the competition, because you'll find opportunities that they may not even see. Who wants to go fight, in the blue ocean strategy world? Who wants to fight in that red ocean when you can find blue oceans using jobs to be done?
Excellent. Well, I think we're near the end of our time here. So do you want to talk about next session?
Right. I can let you do the outro, but just a quick reminder, every Wednesday, we're going to be doing these quick intros, 10 or 15 minutes of presentation and 10 or 15 minutes of Q&A. We have our session 3 next week, which a lot of people are excited about, because this, I think, is what is the core of doing a jobs to be done study, is really defining what job is your customer trying to get done. So that job executor in that market ecosystem, what is the job that they're trying to get done? And that's what we'll be talking about. Brent?
Excellent. Thanks, Zach. So again, thanks again for joining us today. We appreciate your engagement. Awesome questions. Really makes it come to life, and we appreciate the participation. So feel free to continue to post your comments and insights underneath the stream here, and we'll check those out and respond. And make sure to book the next 4 Wednesdays in your calendar at the same time. Follow our hashtag JTBD Foundation Workshop, and make sure to connect with us if you're looking for some support in applying jobs to be done. Thanks again for participating in our LinkedIn Live event. We'll see you next week.